Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? Let SCAB start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.
The following show and broadcast is a production of Better Savannah, an independent expenditure committee dedicated to better policy outcomes at the state and local level. The views, opinions, and statements made by the hosts and/or their guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Better Savannah.
What's up, buddy? What's up, John?
Good.
Hey, man, we are in the midst of quite a busy week. For our members already know, we're recording 5 interviews with all 5 candidates for House District 165, all kind of in the span of about 10 days, plus doing our regular show, which this is episode 54 of the Better Savannah podcast. Title for the episode today is Back to the Beach. We got another candidate for Tybee Island City Council. This is also an election on November 2nd, the same day that all county residents will go to vote on the East Block election. I'm hopeful that we'll have an episode about that soon. But without further ado, I want to welcome our guest in. It's Elaine Magruder. She's a candidate for City Council of Tybee Island. She's a very well-accomplished attorney, served on the City Council of Atlanta, Georgia, from 1979 to 1989, and has been a resident of Tybee Island for the last several years after retiring here, or semi-retiring here, you may say, to the island. Elaine, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, just tell us a little bit about yourself for our viewers who don't know you, or listeners who don't know who you are. What drove you to kind of settle on this area? John and I are both non-natives as well. Chose kind of this area as our home. And what's inspired you to run for City Council of Tybee Island?
As far as this area, I had been visiting here with my husband for 35 years. And then when I decided he died about 16 years ago. We scattered his ashes off the pier on Tybee. So that was one of my ties to Tybee. And then when I decided to retire a few years ago, I wanted to go to the beach because I didn't want to be back in court every day. I had worked as a prosecutor before and then worked as a defense attorney for several years. As far as inspired to run here on Tybee, I think because of my background in urban studies, urban planning, zoning, being an attorney, reading the laws, that I have some things to offer Tybee, and I'm not connected with a business. I don't own an STVR. I'm neutral. So I will be able to vote on everything.
Great. Well, again, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I know that the campaign season as evidenced by our interview last night. John is getting really, really in swing. People are busy. I'm sure you're going from, resident meeting to dropping off a sign. Let's start kind of with issues other than STVRs. We'll get to that issue in a little bit. What are the other issues? Because I know that STVRs is the number one issue out there, but what are the other issues that you're driving in your campaign or you're hearing about from residents out there?
Well, I think the first thing we have to talk about is quality of life, which STVRs are one of the things that are making the quality of life for residents not as good. But there are other things that we should look at too, as far as having clean beaches, clean neighborhoods in the streets, having the garbage picked up, support for Tybee businesses, because Tybee has a lot of restaurants and shops, and we need to support those. And another big one is water conservation. You may be aware that in 2024, Tybee's draw, as far as the water, may be in peril. We were worried about salt water intrusion, which is already, my understanding, has already happened in Hilton Head, and we don't want that to happen on Tybee. We really need our sewers and their water supply. We need a lot of updating done, and you may also know the city council just recently passed a water and sewer rate increase, and they've got plans laid out for the next 5 years of repairing these very old pipes that should have been done years ago. So those are some of the things, and better communication with the city and residents and businesses.
Go
ahead, John.
I've got a sub question in here, which I need a little help understanding, Elaine.
Sure.
Tybee's water draw or consumption, part of it comes from the Floridian aquifer.
Correct.
And part of it comes from shallow wells. Is that correct? They're two different sources at different depths.
Yes, I'll say, but the main thing is the draw from the Floridian aquifer, because you may also know that Tybee tried to have a huge, well, I guess it was really a deep well built, which didn't work. There's still a lawsuit going on about that. The shallow wells that I'm familiar with are mainly citizens have them in their yards for irrigation, not for use inside.
Right. I'm following along with your campaign and other campaigns, and
Sure.
Water consumption seems to be a very critical issue, particularly with the state deadline of 2024, where you may, if I understand it correctly, have to reduce your water consumption drastically, right?
Yes.
Okay. If that happens, what you're on the planning commission now? Is
correct?
That, okay.
Yes.
What is the city's plan if that should happen?
The city actually doesn't give anything to the planning commission to study or look at unless there's a request for a variance, or there's a city, a site plan or something.
Okay.
Some people have talked about no more pools. We've talked for a few years about having a moratorium on no more swimming pools, because that takes a lot of water. But then a lot of people say, if you're going to do that, how about the sprinklers that people use and the yards?
But it's the evaporation in the pools that's the concern, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And plus it's also, pools take a lot of water, even to fill them up. And then you're right, it evaporates and then you have to fill them again. But that's one thing. The others are the sprinklers that use a lot of water.
Has the city not passed a requirement that new pools have to truck in water to fill the pool?
Correct.
Okay.
But that's only, that's a small step.
Sure.
But that's only for trucking. Once you get it filled, if you keep filling it up, then you don't have a problem. You're not required to go out and get more water again. You just fill it up.
They're just going to use their hose. Yeah.
Right.
I'm from California, and the moisture in the air is so low. It's so dry.
Right.
we actually have water lines running into the pool. Whereas here, with the high humidity, the evaporation rate is much slower. And I don't know anyone that has a pool. I have one. And, I just fill it up with the hose when it does need to be brought up a little bit. Well, is Tybee, Elaine, is your assessment that most of the residents understand the severity and importance of this water conservation topic?
I don't know that I would say that most do. I know some do.
Okay.
But we have a population. I mean, there are a lot of new people coming in, and then some of the people that have been here for a while people are used to having the swimming pools. People are used to being able to use the sprinklers. So I would not say that most people understand it.
Well,
it's not been one of those high profile issues.
Right. But here it's 2021 and almost 2022, and that state 2024 point is approaching rapidly. Is the city council, to your knowledge, starting to work on either water conservation efforts or public information programs so that the citizens will get up to speed on this before it arrives?
I have not seen anything that says that, no.
Okay. All right. Well, here's a kind of a fun question. If a total stranger, an alien, just showed up and said, "Oh, you're from Tybee. What's it like?" How would you describe Tybee, as you know it, to a total stranger?
It is a very friendly place. It's a great place with the beach to walk. There are lots of things to do, like the Post Theater, the Marine Science Center, walking out on the pier, going fishing. You can see dolphins from my window when I look out, right? And we have a lot of great restaurants and bars, which I eat out every day. So there are a lot of places to do things.
And if they said, "What's your impression of your current city government?" What sort of grade or comment would you make about both past and current city councils? Seems to me like there's a change coming. I'm not trying to lead you here, but as an outsider, 11 miles down the road, it seems like Tybee's on the verge of some change.
I think so too. I think one of the main issues with the current city council is that there are half of the council members cannot vote on some of the issues.
Wow, half?
There are 6 council members, and there are 3 if there's anything related to alcohol, for example, they can't vote.
Huh. And how about short-term vacation rentals? You have
one of them can't vote on those.
Gotcha. Chuck, you got a question?
I want to go into this short-term vacation rental issue because, one of the themes we're finding with a lot of our local governments is that these cans have been kicked down the road. How did this community let 50% of the housing units become licensed to be able to do this STVR? We supported Jason Buelterman last year for county commission chairman because he was the better of the 2 candidates in that general election. Every day I feel like we get proven right more and more about that. But besides the political points here, Elaine, how did 16 years of Buelterman's administration not somehow catch up to this issue? Because it seems like it would have been a lot easier then than now.
It would have been a lot easier then than now, but I think here as well as across the nation, most people really weren't paying that much attention to it. It was a gradual process. I mean, a few places here, a few places in Savannah, Atlanta, the mountains.
It's the boiling frog theory.
Yes. Totally.
So now that we know what the problem is, what ordinances or zoning are on the books now that either A, aren't being enforced, or B, need changing or updating in order for the enforcement to be able to hold the line on where the number of permits are?
Well, one of the things I pointed out in a post a few weeks ago on Facebook is if the city council wants to, they could go back and change the zoning. They could put a cap where it is now and say that STVRs are prohibited in residential R1, residential R2. And then, of course, people will make the argument, how about the ones that are already there? Okay, if you allow them legally to be grandfathered in, that only goes with the people that own that property now. So when they sell it, that would be one way. You don't have to keep permitting STVRs to come in.
Okay,
So you would put in place where the permit ends with the owner and not with the property.
Correct.
okay, and as a former elected official and as an attorney, are you pretty confident in the ability to end that transference?
Yes, there's a recent court case out of Forsyth County where they have an ordinance where they are saying that you can't have all of these short-term rentals. Judge Bass ruled that Forsyth County was correct when somebody filed a lawsuit against them, and basically pointed, because all the STVR people and their lawyers point out property rights. They're always talking about property rights. And the judge said that your property rights are not being ignored because you can still rent long-term.
Correct.
Right. So if
traditional rentals, which you need more long-term rentals.
Correct.
Don't you?
We do. We do.
Solving two problems in one fell swoop.
Correct. And one of the things that people don't seem to realize at the same time that this STVR, they're yelling that they have property rights. Well, the people that own the house next door have property rights also. You know, the residents have property rights also. The employees need places that they can live, and the businesses need places for their employees to live that they can afford. Reasonable rent on a long-term basis.
Gotcha.
And actually, you know, a long-term is considered more than 30 days. So for 6 months, for a year. Yeah.
I understand. I actually, you know, we've been talking with Matt Kitchens and following
Right.
your island's
Right.
issues that way. And
I think this is the Facebook post you're referring to.
Right. Correct.
okay,
Go ahead, John.
We'll put that up on our page so people can educate themselves with that. I went through your city charter, kind of a cursory review, but with enough, you know, depth to find all sorts of ordinances that are currently on the books, you know, rightfully duly passed,
Right.
and yet we understand that no single STVR has ever been cited. Is that your understanding as well?
No. You're talking about they've never been cited for trash or parking problems or
Yes, for
anything?
violations
Or
of
noise?
your current STVR ordinances.
That is not my understanding. I mean, the city manager, for example, has a coffee that residents can attend every Friday morning, whether in person or by Zoom. And we're told that, yes, there have been citations. Now, the problem, I think, is that in order to take the permit, the way it's set up now is they have to have, I believe, 3 citations, not just citations, but convictions.
Correct.
Which
It's a 3-strike rule. Right?
And at one point, I think they were talking about within a year's time. So that's a lot to do.
Okay, but there is the code in place currently,
Right.
if enforced, that a recalcitrant owner, short-term vacation rental owner, could lose his license.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And do you personally feel that this, I guess it's the city marshal, or is it the police department that cites when necessary?
Well, they're combined. I mean, the marshal is in charge of doing this with the new code enforcement officers, but that's connected with the police department. Yes.
Okay. So
that's one of the questions that came up when we had the town hall meeting recently about STVRs is when are they going to enforce the rules about trash and parking and noise? And I added disorderly conduct.
or overcrowding.
Well, I want to ask because, and let me throw this up on the screen. Nancy Guan from the Savannah Morning News published this article. It's up on the screen for those of you who will listen to the podcast version. This was published on September 20th, so 2 days ago. The way this article is written, Elaine, everything's so slow right now. Sorry. The way this article is written is that there's like an equal divide, in terms of the recent changes city council has made. I'll put a link to this in the podcast description, the video description on Facebook for everybody to be able to read. It's probably behind a paywall. Fair warning from Savannah Morning News here. But is it your perception that there is an equal divide on this issue, or is it more of a one-sided divide?
There's not a divide like they're talking about between the residents. What I just read and what I know to be true is there's a divide between residents and between owners of STVRs. The owners of most of the STVRs do not live on Tybee.
All right, that was going to be my next question. Do you have any feeling, Elaine, for out of your universe, I don't know, what is it, 1,400 short-term vacation rentals? What's the number? What is licensed currently?
My understanding is those are licensed, but those are not residents.
How many? Those are licensed to residents, or
no? Those are. You asked how many were licensed. I said they are licensed, but they're not to residents. They're not. It's not residents that own those. My
question is, what percentage of short-term vacation rental owners are residents?
We keep asking those questions. We haven't gotten a good answer yet, but my impression from talking with a lot of people and walking around here, seeing the ones that are STVRs that don't have residents, the vast majority of them are not residents. And when you look at the voting list, I mean, you have to be a resident of Tybee in order to vote on Tybee. And of course, I've been working with the voting list during the campaign. And the majority of the people who own STVRs on Tybee are not residents.
I think it is the vast majority, John. I want to focus in on this line from this article from Nancy Guan. According to Tybee's planning and zoning manager, which again, you sit on this planning board, right? Prohibiting rentals, short-term vacation rentals in the island's 3 most densely populated neighborhoods would only cut the total number of STVRs by 1/3.
Yes, that would be great.
Right, and that's written as if that's not good.
That would be wonderful.
Wouldn't it, right? I mean, that would be progress, and that would that not be something that is supported by 90-80% of the residents right now?
I would believe so, yes.
Yes. Go ahead, John.
Well, I watched the city council hearing when they passed the moratorium, Elaine.
Right.
And 2 observations, and then I'd like your thoughts. Number one is not all, but a good number of the proponents of short-term vacation rentals just seem to have very little appreciation or neighborliness, if you will, about the neighborhood and the quality of life. They had this myopic business property rights. They just seemed inflexible to me.
Yes.
And I found that I mean, this is not a Second Amendment issue here, but they were acting as if they were Charlton Heston, you know, at an NRA.
My cold dead hands.
Yeah, you won't mess with my short-term vacation rental.
Actually, they're thinking about the cold cash that they're getting from
That's
these.
correct. That's correct.
These places get thousands of dollars a week coming in.
Right.
Well, and I'm sympathetic with the mayor's position. You know, I mean, she's a member of the real estate community. I work with that community. The legislature has failed to give us an updated hotel motel tax schematic, for lack of a better phrase, that would allow governments to shift the equilibrium to a point where the market would actually have a role to play. The problem is the government is essentially, by not coming in to regulate, is de facto subsidizing this type of industry to the tune of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars per year, just in this one, you know, small, you know, 3,500, you know, person community, right? We're in Savannah, and Savannah kind of was late to the game as well, but at least came in with ward by ward caps, you know, right. And there are still areas in town that are whole off limits completely. So right. I think that, you know, the moratorium was a great first step. But I'm interested to see what will happen after the elections, because you guys are going to have to make some kind. You can't just extend the moratorium forever. Obviously, that's not good government either. What do you think is the first step if you, Mac, and another person who's in the camp for STVR reform are elected, and now all of a sudden there's a new majority on council? What are the first step-by-steps in kind of your first 100 days or so to try and get that reform implemented?
I think the first things we need to do are some of the things I've already pointed out as far as establishing a cap. I think we should look at what Savannah's done, since they're our closest neighbor, and model our ordinance along theirs, and also go ahead and change our code to prohibit STVRs in R1 and R2. And I understand people say you can't do. Yes, you can. I know that legally you're going to have to grandfather in the ones that are there.
Correct.
But stop it after that, and regulate it. Because when you're talking about the cost to all the reasons that we have all these problems with sewers and streets and all, we're getting all this traffic in all the time. That's part of it.
And what's your answer to the industry's criticism that if that is done, you know, home valuations on Tybee Island will retreat by a number anywhere from, you know, 2 to infinity, according to some of these people. But, you know, anywhere from 2 to 10% or whatever may retreat in valuation. What is your response to that criticism?
And how much will that still be? $1 million, $2 million, $3 million? Please. They will still be very valuable homes. And yes, other people might actually want to buy here and live here, but don't want to be, you know, with all this about the STVRs now, don't want to buy here now.
You know, Chuck, this it just made me think about the ports and what a totally extractive relationship we have with the ports.
Or SCAD.
Or SCAD. And the short-term vacation rental phenomenon and situation just mirrors that sort of extraction, and the citizens are paying for it. You know, whether it's new growth in Savannah and the fact that we don't have impact fees, or the air pollution and the traffic and congestion that emanates from doubling the port capacity. I mean, we just need smarter people in our government that will stand up and use their authority to balance out and make a level playing field.
Elaine, a lot of the premise of this political project, Better Savannah, is that Chatham County, Savannah, this regional area, has been set up over the last 2.5, 3 decades as a winners take all kind of economy. And we have built public policy surrounding those who are already doing well, right? And so, you know, I come kind of from an economics background, and I'm in banking and finance, and I just come from the school of diminishing returns, right? After a certain point, there's no better benefit back to the community for increased growth of certain industries. And you
most
can
of the taxes don't go to Tybee.
Correct.
From the STVRs.
Right. We're going to talk about that in just a second here. But my point being that we see this applicable across the spectrum of issues: tourism industry and the wages in that industry, affordable housing, along with STVRs, the port, SCAD, which is a nonprofit institution that, you know, has about $350 million in property that they don't pay taxes on in Savannah, where we are. You know, these are issues where we've long since passed the point of diminishing returns. And while STVRs were, you know, cool and hip and new 5 or 10 years ago, they've long passed that for Tybee Island as well. Let me ask you another question. Beyond the R1, R2 change, is the rest of this just kind of up to a cultural change within the local government? Is the city manager who is in place now, have they underperformed on these issues, or are they just kind of trapped by the will of the current council? You know, beyond that first policy change, what else can be done? And is it a personnel or execution issue?
One is enforcement. That's always an issue with anything that's a problem. That's enforcement. That's also when the city council votes on anything, they should be speaking with one voice to the city manager, and not, you know, okay, we passed this, and then somebody on the council says, well, I'd rather do something else. I'd rather do this. Should be one voice. I don't care who the city manager is. If you're hearing from 6 different people as to what you should be doing, that's not going to work.
Well, why is there no clarity if council is taking a vote and establishing policy? What's the disconnect with either not enforcing that or over enforcing that? What's up with the city manager?
I think the city manager, as well as the rest of us, hear different things at different times from the council. I think people talk about how we really need tourists and we really need all that money coming in. On the other hand, it's also costing us a lot of money. We're not getting the taxes from the STVRs. And I think there's a dilemma there as far as when the city council does pass something. Well, remember recently when they talked about changing the alcohol ordinance, and it was like, then you started hearing from all these people says, no, don't do this. The businesses need to be able to sell and let people walk around with alcohol. And other people, like the chief of police, was saying that's causing a lot of our problems here. So who do you listen to? And when you talk about making a decision, it's not only a matter of being smart, it's a matter of having the guts to follow through with decisions.
John, again, I just can't help but remark at the similarities that a lot of these issues we're talking about come down to political will. You know, the will to actually follow through on the decision and face the look. I know that the real estate industry may spend a bunch of money in the next month against you guys, or if you do something in the future, may come back and do it. But who cares? Who cares if you're a one-term council person if you get change done that lasts?
And what does a bunch of money do on Tybee? I mean, what are they going to do? Buy TV ads or something? Would anybody on Tybee care? I mean, I think that Tybee residents are going to vote on the issues that mean something to them. They're not going to be worried about real estate people spending a lot of money.
Yeah. And in informal poll after informal poll, whether it's the amount of letters from residents that the council people received in advance of the moratorium vote or the town hall attendance, you can see that when it comes to residents, this is a 70, 80, 90% issue that nobody has a problem with moving forward on these ideas you're talking about.
It reminds me of Tom Kohler said, let's do bumper stickers that say that tourists don't vote.
Yes.
Yes.
A bumper sticker for this context, which would be perfect, is short-term vacation rentals don't vote.
STVRs
Correct.
don't vote.
So
Correct.
Should do something with that, John.
let me ask, Elaine, you're familiar with impact fees on new construction?
Yes.
Okay. To correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't find anywhere in the Tybee ordinances and charter, you guys haven't implemented an impact fee ordinance, have you?
I don't remember seeing anything like that when I read through the code. No.
Right. Do you think that would be a smart thing to do, considering you still have some growth possibilities out there?
It couldn't hurt, but the big issue are the STVRs that are already operating and the ones that keep wanting to get more permits. I mean, part of the reason I think the council needs to go ahead and act now, before the moratorium even. They've got time to actually pass some of this with a first reading and a second reading, because every time, my understanding is every time they've ever proposed a moratorium in the past, more people go take out permits, register for permits.
Yeah, but they're
not
being granted during the moratorium, right? There's a freeze on
Not during the moratorium, but 200 people applied and got permits when they heard there was going to be a moratorium.
Yeah.
There was a rush of applications at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
$1 million question, Elaine. Out of those 200 fresh applications, how many are residents?
It's a good question.
Yep.
I would say probably more than normal, but maybe not a lot more,
Well, I would think anybody that bought a house on Tybee for their own personal vacation might, they might live at the landings. They might
live in Atlanta. No, I think that's a good point too.
Yeah.
I want to connect this to kind of the other issue, which is kind of tourism writ large. John alluded to it with the tourists don't vote, STVRs don't vote slogan. The state law regarding hotel motel tax was written in the 90s at a time before the book and the movie changed this area. The Olympics changed Atlanta, right? You kind of understand where I'm going with that. The law was written so that a minimum of 40% of the revenue of that tax, and usually it's 50-50, goes towards developing more tourism for that community. So you guys are set up through a bureau called Visit Tybee, which is connected through the same Chamber of Commerce, Savannah Area Chamber of Commerce, that has Visit Savannah. These are both headed by Joe Marinelli, who between the two entities combined makes about $500,000 a year. I know that my internet is a little slow right now. I got to close some more windows here. But what are your thoughts on the relationship with tourism development?
I think we've had enough advertising.
Yeah.
I think Tybee is well known all over the United States. I mean, I volunteer at the lighthouse. I see cars from everywhere. People come in.
Yeah.
People know Tybee. You don't really have to advertise Tybee anymore.
Yeah, and Savannah continues to increase its tourism count. I think we're up to 7 or 8 million a year, and every concierge and every hotel are advising guests, don't miss Tybee. It's really neat. It's on the coast.
And it is. It's a great place.
True. But
too many of you.
the saturation level
Go ahead, John.
is has been met, and someone on your council suggested just giving the Tybee share back to Savannah.
Correct.
And not taking it, and I would say please don't do that.
We don't need it either.
We don't
need to advertise more tourism in town here either.
Yeah, we've already got inertia out the yin yang to, we're good. So I would say reduce it and drop that collection is a more viable option.
Well, maybe look at if there are other possibilities for spending the money.
Well, of course, but
so let's talk about that, because this is where that political will comes back into play, Elaine. You know,
but that's going to be state, though. That's not just.
I actually argue. I would argue that we have the leverage to do this on our own now. And let me explain it, and you tell me what you think about it, both from a political standpoint and from a legal one. Okay, so the law says that you could collect anywhere from 3 to 6 to 8%. Okay, 3 to 8%. Right. If you collect above 3%, you have to split it with that bureau. Okay, so in my mind, that's the leverage point right there. We need to go to these tourism partners and say, look, either you agree to a payment in lieu of taxes, or you give us a percentage of your share back, or we'll just collect the 3. Make up your mind. Right? You know, I hate to put a gun to these people's head, but that's what the law has given us.
It's a sensible sort of Damocles situation where they're going to want the money. So more than likely, they're going to say, okay, let's repave your parking lot at North Beach.
Right.
Let's do something.
That would be great.
Wouldn't it? Right. If they agreed to give a percentage of their share back in community benefits, you know, for the long-term residents, then it would make the remaining monies that they get at least somewhat more tenable to communities that are living here long-term. So I think you guys generate something like $3 million in hotel motel taxes there a year.
I don't know the total.
I think it's about, because here in Savannah, it's 25 million and they get half of it, basically. They get about 11 million of that, right? So like that's an outrageous sum of money to be advertising something that's already fully functioning as a tourism destination. Yeah. You know, again, back to my point of diminishing returns. In 1992, when John Barrett was living downtown writing the book, you know, that setup made sense. That made sense then, right? Tourism was a $18 million a year industry in Savannah then, right? It's a $3.5 billion enterprise here now, and only growing. So we view it the same way as the STVR cap kind of issue. Like, we need to cap the amount of dollars we're using to advertise this area for tourism, and tell those entities, which this is a political will question, right? Look, you can either keep what you have and agree to give back every dollar above this amount in community benefit dollars back to this community, or we can just reduce this tax back down to 3% and we don't have to deal with it at all.
I would really like to see some of the money diverted to do things for Tybee residents, for Tybee businesses. Because, I mean, not just North Beach parking lot, but the parking lot at Huckapoo's, which is,
you know, this really goes, what Chuck has described fits perfectly, dovetails with your point about political will. Your council has the authority in its charter, granted from the state, to control that issue. But the people that visit Savannah will tell you you can't do that. But they're wrong.
But you're an attorney, and I know that if you go look at that law, I mean, there's nothing stopping a city from putting that proposition on the table to their tourism bureau and say, look, you've saturated this market. You've achieved success. George Bush on the aircraft carrier. Mission accomplished, right? Either accept that whatever level you had a year or two ago before COVID was enough dollars, and everything above that needs to return to community benefits, or we can just not deal with you at all by not collecting the tax. Yeah. I don't see anything in the state law, and I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on Facebook. But I don't see anything stopping a city from using that leverage with the Tourism Bureau. They can choose to play ball or not. It's up to them.
Yeah. So
I am interested in what you're saying, and I will go look at the law.
Yes, ma'am. Please do. Let me know if I'm wrong. I just don't see anything in there that tells me that. I just think that it's a political will issue. I don't think there's a city council brave enough to do it. But maybe this Tybee election could be the wave of change on this tourism management issue, because we're not trying to take away, just like you're not, you can't take away the current licenses. You're not campaigning on that. That's not possible. We're just saying we don't want to grow this industry anymore because,
right.
Elaine, you must know with your long experience in this world of public policy, this industry brings low wages. That this industry of tourism thrives on the least of these in our community. The 28% of poverty in Savannah is directly correlated to their success. So I just don't see the economic value of investing $1 into it.
Well, when you were talking earlier about diverting some of the money, that was one of the things I was thinking about was, how about wages for the people that actually work in the industry? All of the waiters and waitresses and chefs and, anybody that works in the tourism industry. How about some of the tourist money goes to them?
Yeah. As soon as your council votes to not renew that collection on hotel motel tax, except to the 3% level, the chamber and visit will be on your doorstep saying, what's it going to take to reinstate this next year? What sort of deal can we make? But until you guys,
how many tickets to the Chatham Club do you need?
Yeah, until your council makes that move, you really don't have any leverage because they're in charge right now. So let's talk about your council. You got a 7-member council, correct? Six.
Well, the mayor votes.
6 plus the mayor.
Of a tie.
Only in a tie. So you've got amongst the other 6 currently. Can without naming names, do you think you have a majority for a discussion and possible action on this hotel motel tax collection reduction, or is this going to take a new council?
I don't know that either one would vote for it.
You don't know a single person that would vote for it?
I don't know that either the current council or a new council would vote for it. I don't know that. I don't think
she's saying it's still a fluid situation. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I'm responding to when you say if I think it will take a new council. I don't know that a new council, even if we had 3 new members, would vote for it. I've not heard anybody advocating that.
Well,
certainly Nancy DeVetter, I think, would vote for it.
You'll have to ask her.
I think Mac would if he got elected, and that's, you need one more, and now you got a tiebreaker. What would Shirley do?
You're gonna have to ask Shirley.
Yeah,
of course.
Right.
We'll work on trying to get her on the show either before or after these elections. Gotcha. Well, I mean, looking at the votes cast, 4 years ago, there was 1,146 votes. The win number has got to be somewhere between 380 and 420 for getting probably one of these elections. I mean, assuming it was, I think the win number was 490 last time. So it's probably going to be a little bit lower, because I imagine there's less residents now than there were 4 years ago.
Are you looking at 4 years ago or 2 years ago? Because 2 years ago was when the mayor was elected.
No, I'm looking at 4 years ago.
Okay.
I'm comparing the same election from 2017 when Monty and Brannigan. Is that right? I think they won their seats.
4 years ago. Brandon.
Yes.
Well, I think actually Monty had a term before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, he's in his 3rd one now. Yeah.
How many votes, Chuck? 4 years ago?
I mean, the winners that got onto the seats got 510, 500, and 482.
Okay.
And then that person, I think, is gone now or something. I'm not sure, but we're going to try and do everything we can do to help you guys out there. I think, the region as a whole of this Chatham County kind of coastal empire, there's interconnectivity around this tourism issue and the ports issue, because, I mean, make no mistake, every increased container ship traffic there is in that channel is eating away at that beach.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. The dredging is not helping, right? For these issues. So, we are, set up as a, kind of just an independent watchdog type group that can step in and put these messages out to residential communities to try and reinforce candidates. You guys have what I would call, a strong, woman mayor in Shirley in terms of her,
Yes.
I respect her,
Strong and patient and trying to work
Yes.
things out between other people. She's good.
Correct. And I think, you are an example of, my co-host here's, generation of talent that, can be used now in the here and now. In Savannah here, we got 7 out of new 9 council members, and none of them bring to the table the type of experience that you bring to a role like this. And so I just really think that you'd be an asset, not only for the city of Tybee, but for the region, because a lot of this stuff is ultimately going to take help from the state legislature. And
Yes.
my thoughts are that the more municipalities that are united together on issues, the harder it's going to be for especially the Republican members of our delegation who represent your area, Senator Ben Watson, Representative Jesse Petrie in particular, to bend their will to their constituents' needs. Because if 7 or 8 out of 9 municipalities are all asking for the same thing,
Right.
Right.
it becomes less tenable for a county delegation to ignore that.
Correct.
Do you have a relationship? Have you met any of them? Have you gone to any of their meetings or teletown halls or anything?
I've met them more when they've come to Tybee. As it turns out, because of my long experience, some of the people that I was on city council with in Atlanta actually were known to Mayor Van Johnson.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember talking with Mayor Van Johnson, and we talked about my having served on the Atlanta City Council. And of course, his take on that was, well, if you served on the Atlanta City Council, Tybee should be no problem. I said, it's a totally different world. Tybee is much smaller and personal.
Yes.
So.
Well, I want to say this, John, and let me get your thoughts on this. I think that Mac Kitchens and Elaine Magruder are a kind of perfect tag team for a new council in Tybee, because Mac is a lifelong, almost like, I know he left and came back, but he was born and raised there and has come back. He's lived the vast majority of his life on this island. Everyone who's been there a long time knows Mac Kitchens, and so if you've got a long time revered island leader who saves people's lives on the beach, with somebody who is a retiree that moved here a few years ago, which is what people want to do in Tybee, for Tybee. They want it to be a retirement destination, but brings a wealth of knowledge and experience from the legal and policy world. I feel like you and Mac will kind of be a good yin and yang balance to the regulatory apparatus.
And we're friends. In fact, at the event we had Saturday night, we had a big fundraiser here for
Kelly,
a lady.
yeah.
Right. Mac told me then that he thought we would win. I said, okay, Mac, sounds good.
Well, from his lips to the political god's ears. Why don't you, give us some closing thoughts and let us know, our viewers and listeners knows, how to find you or get in contact with you, sure, or to be able to support you in any way. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I think obviously the quality of life for residents is the most important for all of us. That's why we're talking about STVRs, better communication, clean beaches, those kinds of things. As far as getting in touch with me, my cell phone number is 678-777-6623. My email is Elaine Mcgruder 04 at gmail.com. So anybody can get in touch with me. Plus, I'm out every day. Walking, going to the bars and restaurants. So you can easily find me.
Great. And you welcome all contacts and questions, right?
Yes. And I will respond. That's one of the promises I've made to people, and I put it out on Facebook. I will listen to anybody and I will respond. Even if I'm disagreeing with you, I'm still going to respond, and maybe you'll have some more information to change my mind. But sometimes you have to agree to disagree, but I will still respond to you. You won't be ignored by me.
Very nice. Well, I can't thank you enough for making yourself available and
Sure.
openly discussing, important issues and solutions to make our community a better community and a stronger community.
Thank you. And I've enjoyed talking with you. Nice meeting you by Zoom.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming by, and we wish you the best of luck in the election. And we know that you're going to work hard right on up through the finish line.
November 2nd.
November 2nd. If you know anybody who's a resident of Tybee Island, make sure that they get out and vote for Elaine Mcgruder. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Take
ma'am.
care.
Bye-bye. All right, John, let me play a couple of these videos. You cut some really good new ads for Mac, and I'm going to look forward to seeing what you've got for Elaine coming up soon here. Now that I think we should get behind here. Let me play the water. Let me play the water ad, because I think this is a really effective ad you made.
Tybee is definitely worth saving.
Just, simple, less than 20 seconds, on the social media feeds. The playthrough percentage is really strong. But I also like this other ad that you cut as well.
Okay.
Opinion, Tybee hasn't managed growth very well. We still have a chance at bringing back our community. Tybee is definitely worth saving.
All right, so now that we've got 2 endorsements that we're going to do for this race, I like this slogan: "Back Mac, elect Elaine."
Okay.
Right? I meant what I said to her, John. I think the yin and yang of that lifelong cultural icon that's Mac Kitchens, and this, studious, accomplished litigator, public policy professional that retired there. I just feel like it's Batman and Robin. It's a good.
I think it's
I think it's a 1-2 punch that Tybee Island and our region needs.
Yeah. Well, Chuck, despite their differences, Elaine being new to the island, Mac being standing, Mac being the total waterman and outdoors guy, and Elaine probably in her studio painting and drawing. These 2 people have basically the same goals, and that is to try to restore some of the loss of quality of life to the island. So as diverse as they may be in specifics, they're completely pro-resident, pro-reclaiming the charm of Tybee or stopping the erosion of it. So I agree with you.
So, John, we've really been knee-deep in House District 165 interview politics lately. And, I just want to update our viewers and listeners who are not members yet, and, encourage people, that if you want instant access to our interviews and episodes for these candidates for House District 165, you could do so by becoming a member or subscribing through Patreon. It's a simple app on your phone. It's $5 a month. You get early access. John, as of this recording, while this will be broadcasting for Thursday, the 23rd, you and I will actually be recording with Clinton Young, who ran against Mickey Stevens in the primaries last time. And got 41, 42%. I think, wasn't a joke. And so, we'll be interviewing him. We've already interviewed Sabrina Kent. We've interviewed Antoine Lang from the Board of Elections. We are going to sit down over the weekend at some point with Clinton Cowart, who qualified as a libertarian. and we're going to record with former Mayor Edna Jackson on Monday. So I want to let everybody know kind of what the schedule is going to be. So we're not going to do a regular show next week like we are this week. And we're going to roll out kind of every 2 to 3 days an episode for 10 straight days or so. So next Tuesday, we're going to roll out the first interview. I don't know which one it's going to be yet. We'll do one next Tuesday, another one next Thursday, another one the following weekend, and then another one on Monday and Wednesday, leading into our next regular show, which will be 2 weeks from today, the first week of October, where we'll do an analysis and announce any endorsements that we may choose to make, that the committee will make. Those of you who are already members, there's a lot of engagement about this race in the group, in the Facebook group, which you'll get access to if you become a member. So feel free to send us your feedback, because you've already seen 2 of the 5 interviews, and you'll see another one tomorrow night or Friday morning after we're done with it with Clinton. So just want to kind of update everybody there, John, and then kind of just freewheel a little bit with you here for a few more minutes for our regular weekly show. I've got kind of one Savannah Morning News article I want to pull and talk about, but what else on your mind?
That's basically it. I'm very quickly remembering how frantic it was, both in the city elections of 2019 and the county elections, and then we hit that lull of kind of dead air, and we're coming out of it, Chuck, and we're coming out of it fast. So,
well, I just want to remind you, John, we've got this general election, which is Tybee Island, House District 165, Fort Wentworth, and East Bluffs. That's all November. We're likely to have a runoff for House District 165
for sure
in December.
Yep.
Qualifying for the 2002 primaries is the first week of March, right? Wow. So January, February, that's 3 months basically after the runoff. Will be qualifying, and that's all the state, state constitutional seats, all the state legislative seats. It's just a virtual ton of political action that's going to be on the horizon. So I thought you were going to get me back with a pump or dump this week, because I had you last week on it, but it's all good.
Well,
let's
give me another week or two, and
I know it's coming, buddy. Let's talk about this, John.
Hey, before we do,
you got something first?
Yeah, I do.
We'll get to it in a second. Go ahead.
I do. When will people be viewing this, Chuck?
Tomorrow, Thursday the 23rd, 7 p.m.
All right. Let's tell everybody where we're going to be Friday night, supporting a really great effort, hospice.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be at the Saints and Sinners event at Soho Cafe and Austin Hill Realty.
Yeah.
It's a silent auction, cocktail party to benefit Hospice Savannah. And you'll be there with Rachel. I'll be there with Maria. And
we should have a great time.
Yeah, anybody that wants to grab a ticket, come down and bend our ear in person.
Sure to be one of the hotter political attendance-wise events of the season.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of elected officials there, I'm sure.
I'm sure a certain lawyer running for Congress will be there. I'm sure many council and county and state people will be there. I did get an invite to a Derek Malo fundraiser, and I just want to reiterate what I said to him. He's doing a good job. I'm cautiously impressed by Representative Malo in his first half of his first term, and I'm pending what the maps look like, I'm going to probably want to support him for re-election.
The Saints and Sinners deal on the half shell. What that is the local artist Shelley Smith, who's just a fabulous person, a wonderful artist, has painted on oyster shells a lot of portraits.
Are we in them? I hope not.
I don't think we made the cut, Chuck. They're important. Maria. And,
no panhandle for you.
Yeah, no. Anyway, art, cocktails, benefits, hospice. What more could you ask for?
And Soho is such a great venue.
It is.
It's a great venue. It's downtown. So if you want to come meet us, bring a mask. I know Austin's pretty good about COVID precautions.
Yep.
Austin Hill Realty is the main kind of leading sponsor. Great people, great Savannah family.
This is the event of the season, so don't.
I hope so. I hope it's not the only one, but it's I saw that events under 500 people are permitted in Savannah, so
yeah,
let's go.
The other thing, Chuck, is I want to do a little housekeeping before I forget.
Sure.
And I want to encourage people to watch Alicia Blakely's show, By Us and For Us.
It's on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
On her Facebook page.
Right. And, of course, Candidly Keisha, which is part of the ATR network, which are good friends of the committee. And we have an awful lot in common in terms of
policy goals.
Yeah, trying to make better policy so our community's better.
Yeah, and the ATR network as a whole is kind of really taken off. Right now, as we're recording this on Wednesday, they're on their kind of main weekly show, The Rabble, which is usually both equally politically engaging and hilarious.
Yeah.
At the same time, Charlie Brown, Chandra McKeithen, who's a former city council candidate who lives in Texas now. There's a lot of good personalities. Chairman of the Democratic Party, Jay Jones, he kind of has a Jimmy J persona. He's doing a Friday night show. It is what it is.
Yep.
His second episode he did was really hitting on some of the things he was saying. There's a lot of good independent gearing type of media. And I just think it's really good to plug these outlets right before we talk about this next article.
Right. And lastly, I want to say shout out to Trainwrecks, because sometimes I forget.
Always. We need to tell them thank you.
Yeah, the Trainwreck giving us our music bed was the kind. And I love you guys. And anybody that has a chance to go see the Trainwrecks, don't miss it. Jason Bible and the crew are unbelievable. So where do you want to go?
Yeah, and I also just, one other place we plug a lot is the Savannian, Savannah's premier independent alt weekly. And speaking of Jason Bible, Jason Stats passed away,
right?
And Stats Fest is a big kind of, deal. Jim Marikis released his his wonderful article about it. It's free on the Savannian. Just go to savannian.com and you will see it up on the headlines. Just a really great article. So just, super sad, losing a lot of good people lately. Norm Macdonald left us, it's a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of sadness.
So I wanted to, John, this is going to be our last, kind of regular episode for like 2 weeks. We're going to be really just solely in the weeds in House District 165 for the next 2 weeks. So I wanted to pull these two articles because I know that we're not going to get a chance to talk about them much more.
You're going to make me talk about Adam Van Brimmer and Van Johnson.
It's not, and Bill Dawers. I got to warn you. I got a Bill Dawers piece here too. Okay, buddy. All right. So check this out. All right. So this is an editorial from the other day from editorial news director Adam Van Brimmer, Savannah Morning News, our old pal. Shouts out to the Town Square group that this will get shared into tomorrow. Let me just read the headline and I'll pick out a couple of phrases from the article, John, okay? Mayor Johnson is an adept crisis manager. His legacy depends on his policy-making skills. Savannah's mayor has distinguished himself as a leader throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. With a new city manager finally on board and policy recommendations in hard, he must now deliver on agenda promises. So this is basically what you and I have been saying since about May of last year, John. May of 2020, June of 2020, kind of as COVID became super serious, we really kind of saw, wow, Van's a really good communicator in a crisis. We've never really criticized his COVID crisis handling.
No,
other than outside of maybe like the CARES Act funding, but that's more of a fiscal, kind of good government issue. That's not a crisis management issue, in my opinion. All right. Go ahead, John.
Well, I just want to say from the jump, when he canceled St. Patrick's Day back in March of 2020, I was a Van fan on his crisis management. I'm saddened that fewer people did not heed the mayor's advice and counsel. Okay, you can see that reflective in the community vaccination rates, which were pitifully lower than they should have been, even amongst his own employees.
Sure. Now we've got an incentive program, which is expensive, but might do the trick.
There's a lot of haters out there that say, why should we pay people to do the right thing? But you know what? I don't want to get COVID. I don't want you to get COVID. I don't want, my mother-in-law and father-in-law to get COVID. So I'm with the mayor. Give him incredible props for his crisis management. Just to jump ahead, I've got the 97-page housing task force report.
Sure.
And I've got to read it, and I'm hoping that it is solid, it is reasonable, it is realistic, and I hope that it's achievable. So
let me read this. Let me pull a little bit out of this editorial. Okay, John. To Johnson's credit, he's positioned himself for his success. His many task forces, part of his place at the table approach, have produced data and recommendations to help guide the mayor and council in tackling some of Savannah's most pressing issues. He has a city manager with experience addressing those same challenges and an assistant city manager in Heath Lloyd who knows the local landscape. Johnson would also appear to have the votes to get things done. He and 4 council members, Dietrich Leggett, Nick Palumbo, Curtis Pertee, and Linda Walter Bryan, routinely agree on policy issues. That block alone has the power to advance legislation, but 2 others, Alderwoman Bernetta Lanier and Mayor Pro Tem Estella Shabazz, appear increasingly amenable to working with their colleagues after a prolonged period of estrangement. This writing, John, Jesus. I'm gonna just one more piece. I'm gonna break here. Those 6 council members are the 6 district-specific aldermen and alderwomen. Their neighbors are their first priority, and they bring that perspective to policy discussions. This shared sense of purpose should produce results. Differences over small yet important details can be resolved without division. This is the most important line. If you could disagree without being disagreeable, you can negotiate in good faith to find common ground. That is Adam Van Brimmer just signaling, if you are not in line with the status quo, if you're going to be disagreeable about winners taking all, well, you're just not going to be able to negotiate at all. No soup for you, as they would say on Seinfeld.
It's myopic and completely excludes the possibility that people who are committed, passionate, and fighting as hard as they can shouldn't get credit or acknowledgement because they're too loud, or they're too serious, or they're too emphatic. So I'm glad you that Adam wrote this crisis management.
I want to just pull out the ending of this editorial because this is the part that I agree with. All right. Okay. Van Brimmer writes, ultimately, Johnson will be judged both historically and in November 2023 at the ballot box by what he accomplishes over the next 2 years. He is without question a great wartime leader, but will that be the whole of his legacy or just a footnote? So I want to put that question to you, John. I want to put Adam's question to you because I've got my answer. Go ahead.
I'm ready. Okay. The crisis management accolades are well deserved in terms of COVID, in terms of the pandemic. Okay, take nothing away. 100% go Van. The funny thing that does not make it into his article or conversation is the crisis of council that was created by Van Johnson.
That's correct.
And remains to this day. And that is his changing of the rules of council to exclude dissenting voices to be able to put stuff on the agenda, Chuck.
And as people will find out in our interviews with the candidates for the House District 165 race, we are kind of referring to this as the original sin. And, this kind of original sin started
April
days after the inauguration. No, it started with Gordon Matthews writing a letter. I know this is so inside the ball game. I mean, you'd have to know that Alicia Ayr Scott, sometimes ATR, media personality who ran against Ron Stevens years ago, she FOIA'd it from Ron, because got tipped off by a Capitol insider. Yep. She Freedom of Information acted it from Ron Stevens, and that set off a chain of reaction that ended with Mayor Van Johnson saying, "Well, I don't know, Mr. Matthews. He's a private resident." Well, guess what? We're private residents too, and we're going to try and get these things changed. And let me just put this out there. Let me just put this out there as a preview to these interviews coming up, John. I find it very hard to support a candidate running in this special election who's not openly willing and engaging about changing the city charter to amend those rules for the agenda access, John. I'm finding it incredibly hard to support anybody who does not have a good position on that.
Well, look at the COVID crisis is nothing that Van Johnson is responsible for. He had no control over it.
Correct.
Coming. It was a worldwide phenomenon.
Right.
The internal crisis on council was his doing. He organized that. He planned that. And when he said, when confronted about the Gordon Matthews memo to Ron Stevens in January of 2020, he said, I had nothing to do with that. And I'm not interested in that at all.
But was interested in changing the rules 90 days later.
Exactly. Thank you. So I wish Adam would be a little more comprehensive in his piece.
I wish the powers that be would understand that if the legislature doesn't step in, then that's a rules ordinance, John. That's an Article 9 referendum away from getting changed.
God, I hate to spend $10,000 or $20,000.
Oh yeah, me too, man. But I can get on the phone and start fundraising. It's not going to be impossible. So I just can't. Again, I'm really previewing some of our interviews here by saying this, but I can't find myself supporting any candidate that's not on our side on that issue. It's just such a fundamental democracy issue to me.
Let me ask you a question, Chuck, and then we'll move on. If we were able to gather the signatures within the city of Savannah to call a referendum to restore access to the agenda at some level, maybe 2 people, 3 people, but not 5.
Right.
Right on. Chuck, what do you think the passage rate of that? I presume you think it would prevail, but
we would need the language to be succinct.
What is the argument from the other side to vote no against that? Think about it.
I mean, apparently we're supposed to respect outcomes, again, previewing a lot here, but I agree with you, John. I don't think, look, if East lost and Freeport referendum with all the negativity surrounding these items are still going to pass by 60%, I find it hard to believe that we're not going to get at least 57% voting to change that rules ordinance back. So I don't want to go down that road either. It's a lot of work, a lot of money. We're going to have to hire people, attorneys. It's going to suck. But
we got a shot with the delegation.
We have a shot with the delegation, and this House special election is a clear through point to that delegation making that decision in the springtime. Because, John, if they ignore this in the legislature, they all got elections in May and November of next year. So they can't afford to ignore this issue.
One last postscript on the Van Brimmer piece, Chuck.
Yes.
I think you read a line talking about the policy innovation that's got to come from Van's majority on council, and you referenced Linda Wilder Bryan, Nick Colombo.
It's not going to happen.
Leggett and Curtis Purty, right? Right now, and we're 2 years into their term, what policy innovation has happened?
A slightly less bad tasting bond issuance for Rockingham Farms, to-go cups that are aluminum, the arena.
All they did was spend more money on the arena, Chuck. That's.
I know. I mean, but they're going to say that's an accomplishment. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying what they're going to come up with. Those are the three biggest things I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, well, I don't mean to be dicey or spicy or unkind, but out of that group, there isn't anything that I call significant. And now they've got 2 years to deliver. And let's remember, they campaigned on impact fees, term limits,
right?
More transparency, and having a 5-member requirement to get something on the agenda is hardly transparent. As a matter of fact, that's the exact opposite. That means
that's correct.
You're only going to hear from one side. You're not,
and you're never going to have to take tough votes. You know, take the tough votes. You know,
if we lose, we lose. But at least let's get them.
It's controlling the flow of information. It's dictatorial. It's crabs in a bucket, man. Two tears in a bucket, motherfucking. You know, it's what Lady Chablis would say.
It's been a very carefully curated kabuki show, overlaid with a huge pandemic crisis.
Well, let's just think about it in this context, John. We just had a great conversation with a council candidate from Tybee, Elaine Mcgruder.
Right.
And a lot of that conversation centered around the idea of political will, right?
It did.
These people in Savannah, these council people in Van's majority, John, they do not have the political will, brother.
No, they don't. They don't do anything without checking with their Supreme
with somebody, with Marinelli, or
I'm sorry,
I'm going to tag Marinelli in this post. By the way, I want him to see those comments from this council candidate. You know, we gotta get this ship righted with that stuff. So, do you want to take? I want to do one more article, John,
right,
because I know that we're not going to have time to do another big show about this, but. Friends of Forsyth Park updated their plan, and it is scaled back. It's improved. Meg Ryan is kind of, the co-chair. She's been on Savannah Morning News podcast. But this is a article from City Talk columnist Bill Dawers, the professor. I love how at the top of this article, he outlines no changes are imminent. Full implementation could take decades, but that's
hopeful.
I think a bad way to lead this article, because does anything else after you write this matter now?
Yeah, right.
Right. Well, why should I read on beyond this line?
Yeah, I wonder if we'll be alive. Sorry.
I think you will. I hope so.
I hope so, but
we just have to get you on the first floor. That's all. So there's more kind of BS fluff about the project here in the middle. Regrettably, the design team has been thrust into the middle of ongoing controversies about bicycling in the city. This is a misdirection. Okay, so this is a reference to a group of citizens that we are supporting in a coalition that are demanding that Drayton and Whitaker become one lane along the park right there, John, right?
Right.
He wants to make this about bicycling because Bike Walk Savannah and Alderman Nick Palumbo, John Bennett, that whole crew, they're making great strides with Tide to Town and stuff about a more bikeable city. I don't disrespect that agenda, okay? These are two mutually exclusive things, guys, okay? I want the freaking safety. I don't want to potentially die just walking across the street going to a park.
Does Dawers say that Bike Walk Savannah and that whole crew are still fighting for the pilot program on Drayton and Whitaker redesign?
Let me read this portion of the article, okay? Right. Second, a significant number of downtown area residents and proponent of better transportation policies have long advocated for protected bike lanes in conjunction with traffic calming on Drayton and Whitaker. Notice, John, he refuses to say one lane. Yeah, he's alluding to it as traffic calming.
Yeah, that's
this is how media carries the water for the establishment. This is just a great example. And again, this is a smart guy, a decent writer from time to time, but for sure is just carrying the water. Let me read this next paragraph. But since city officials seem committed to inaction, the updated Forsyth plan assumes that bicyclists will still be commuting through the park rather than on adjacent streets. The design team is therefore proposing to increase the width of the existing perimeter path to 14 feet along Whitaker Street, Drayton Street, and Park Avenue. This is extending the sidewalk to take less green space, eat up more green space, more sidewalk, so that it's slightly wider on the sidewalk for bicyclists and pedestrians to share the sidewalk. What is this? Why are we supporting any changes to the park other than a set of bathrooms somewhere else besides the restaurant area? Why are we supporting anything but that since there's no concessions on Whitaker and Drayton?
I don't know why the city of Savannah engineering department streets are so slave-like to the automobile, Chuck. Putting more yellow flashing lights only makes a bigger risk. Narrowing the streets protects people, it protects bicyclists, it protects pedestrians, it protects runners. And the thing is so carefully worded, you almost think that you're going to get that, but then you think about it and you go, no, they're not going to take any of the street away. They're going to go inside the green space and carve out another 16 feet from the perimeter on the inside.
When you start to do the math, John, if it's another 2 square feet of green space, you got to times that all the way around. The three streets that they just talked about, Drayton, Whitaker, and Park. I mean, you're talking about probably a couple thousand square feet of green space.
Yeah.
Maybe 1,500 at the most.
You know the difference between OD and ID, right? Outer dimension and inner dimension.
I mean, it's been a while since, Geometry 201, John.
Yeah, but this plan...
the difference between LTV and DTI? I know you do, but...
There's no OD in the sense that we're going to take away a little bit of the automobile golden protected territory here. We're going to encroach on the green space, which is just a lousy compromise. Why people don't have the fortitude to say, you know what, let's try a pilot program. Let's see for 3 months if this will work. And if it doesn't, so be it. We tried, we're wrong, we can accept that. I mean, that's reasonable. The idea of saying, well, you just can't do that, and we're going to go the other way, that flies in the face of where public opinion is and how this project got off on the wrong foot because they didn't take into account public opinion very well.
Right.
So they're still being tone deaf, but they're also being politically spineless because they won't insist on a pilot program. I'm not saying permanent, but let's be fair. Let's be adults, okay? Try it. If it's deemed a success,
I would say, to quote Adam Van Brimmer, they are the ones being disagreeable. Okay?
well,
They're talking about you can't disagree without being disagreeable. Holding the status quo when we've got this many problems with this much poverty, with this much growth going on, John.
Yeah.
To me, that's disagreeable.
Yeah. Well, listen, Chuck, I'm glad the Forsyth Park Friends Committee, Parade Committee has modified and
I give them some credit for scaling it back.
Yeah.
But again, to me, what's the point of the city spending this money, any money on this plan?
Well, there's no money budgeted for it, Chuck.
No, I know, but theoretically, this plan will lead to those budgets being made, right?
Yeah. Well,
so
anyways, again, another half measure that isn't very satisfying, and this council seems to be flooded with half measures that aren't very satisfying.
Well, this was another great, regular free episode of Better Savannah. This is episode 54. So the next 5 episodes, John, are all interview episodes with candidates for House District 165. And then episode 60, I told you it was going to jump up quick because of these candidate interviews, John.
Yeah.
Episode 60 will be our House District 165 recap. And that show is going to be broadcasted live 2 weeks from the day this is being broadcasted, which is the 23rd. So the first Thursday in October there.
And that's the show that we tell how we honestly feel about each candidate.
I hope so, yeah.
It's going to be brutal.
I mean, I hope not.
Brutally honest.
I mean,
I'm afraid, Chuck, we're going to wind up with a whole bunch, with a collection of half measures, and I'm just hoping I'm wrong.
I don't want to give away too much. If you're a member and you're or a patron, you've already seen comments of ours inside the group on the episodes that have already aired to the members. I encourage everybody to grab access to that by going to patreon.com/BetterSavannah or www.bettersavannah.org. So, John, I mean, quickly by election day, we should be pushing 65 to 70 episodes. We're going to be really busy the next 6 or 8 weeks. So I'm glad that we both got some vacations in. I was up in Atlanta this past weekend. Saw the Vincent Van Gogh immersive experience. Pretty awesome.
You were on a barbecue tour too, right?
I did go to Fox. All right. So Fox Brothers Barbecue, I stayed in an Airbnb like right across the street from it. And it was so busy both days that we did not end up getting to eat there until right when they opened at 11 a.m. on Monday when we were getting ready to leave. So I thought that was amazing. I also went to this Banksy, show. It was pretty cool. Got some cool stuff there. I hung out in this area called Little 5 Points, and everybody who's been to it, who knows about Atlanta, knows what I'm talking about here. And like Little 5 Points was what Starland was supposed to become, John. Yeah. Before all the gentrifiers and moneyed people kind of took over.
They have aluminum to-go cups.
They don't have aluminum to-go cups in Little 5 Points, but they will in Starland. But, my point being is I put up a post on my own page. Like, I just never seen a Black small business center area like that before that's thriving, with a mix of Black and white owned businesses. Yeah. We need to do something like that. There's a food truck park called Little 3 Points down kind of where Tatumville and all that area is getting ready to meet. We need to put some city investment around that area to guarantee some equity in that development. But just like how you were in California, kind of noticed some policy things. Yeah. I too kind of keep an eye out. Took a couple of really good trips on the MARTA line to get into downtown and out of downtown while I was there. I was telling Rachel that we need a rail line to and from the airport, and that's it.
Chuck, what did you hear anything about? What's the city, the rich city that wants to become a city?
So this is the Buckhead cityhood movement.
Yeah.
This is the rich part of North Atlanta.
Are they going to be successful?
John, their delegation has to vote for it in the session. Okay.
All right.
And kind of like how our delegation politics are, I don't really see that delegation. Remember, John, any of the state senators in that delegation can pull it.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not really sure it's going to be up for debate just yet. I don't think it'll go to a referendum vote anytime soon, to answer your question.
Okay.
Okay. This is not a situation like, say, the Skidaway Island vote last year.
Yeah.
Right. Remember that? Like that's an unincorporated area, right? This isn't already incorporated into the city. This has, I read somewhere, John, that it would cost $1 billion for Buckhead residents to get out of Atlanta, basically, because you would have to have lawyers litigate out what is the proper amount of the city of Atlanta's bond debt that these people are responsible for,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
How much of the city's school debt, and are they going to participate in Fulton County schools still? Are they going to start their own? Decatur has its own city school district in Decatur right next door. That's a complicated question with potentially devastating answers down the road if it goes through.
Yeah.
There was a similar thing called Eagles Landing in Stockbridge a couple of years ago, and that ended up getting stopped in the legislature. I hope that this is the same result here. That was, again, a rich white part of town trying to leave a city and form their own and leave the black residents with all the debt and the crime and stuff. And so, I want to see that killed. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to talk. We should ask George Cheedy to come back on and talk about that. He's writing really good stuff. George Cheedy, who's been on the show before,
Sure.
Subscribe to the Atlanta Objective, the Next Atlanta .substack. I'll try to get a link of that in there as well. So that's something to follow. But, we're going to have, like I said, John, 2 weeks here of just straight House District 165 stuff. So, kind of send us, especially, if you're in the members group, feel free to send us this anytime. But, give us some stuff you want us to cover over the next week or two, because we're going to miss a lot. There's a council meeting tomorrow that we won't have time to cover. We will be a little bit behind on non-electoral stuff for the next couple of weeks. So if you know of anything, shoot it to us.
Yeah, and if someone out there wants to start a free Ardsley Park, make its own city, we'll have you on the show.
I'm sure I can think of a few characters who would do that, but let me just play a couple of these ads on our way out and get us done for the night. I appreciate you sitting down for this interview with Elaine. I'm really impressed with her. Pleasure. And I want everybody to support her in those Tybee Island elections. So we appreciate you guys stopping by for our regular weekly show. We'll see you shortly in a couple days to start our House District 165 election interviews. Yeah. All right. See you guys soon.
Tybee is dead. In my opinion, Tybee hasn't managed growth very well. We still have a chance at bringing back our community. Tybee is definitely worth saving.
Savannah needs additional tourism. Savannah needs additional tourism.
I mean, I appreciate our tourism community. I appreciate our hoteliers in particular.
This is the Council of Change, and we are bringing that.
Today is delivery day. We're out here delivering the pilot to-go cups. So I'll see you all out there. I'm going to go rock this delivery. Come out and enjoy the aluminum to-go cups, and we'll be launching these bad boys next week. I'll see you out there soon.
Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? Let SCAB start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.